Okay, welcome everybody to another Wu-Sabat Outformation class in the UK, brought to you by All Eyes on Egypt, Midlands and the North, as part of United Sabaeans Worldwide.com. Thank you, Manthu Ba'a Gibab, another student teacher and facilitator for today, for the introduction. And we're going to continue with I Was There, which is here. This is the second part of this class, but still on part one of that Partarak, which is in two parts. Partarak means the way. So you can see the picture of this, whoops. You can see a little picture of the scroll here, and this is part one. It's part one of two parts, and so we're just covering part one at the moment, even though it's part two of this class, not to sound too confusing in this regard. I'm not going to do a sound check, so if you can hear me okay, or I'm coming in a bit loud, then can you just put some feedback in the chat area just to see that you can hear me okay and clearly, or if I'm coming on too loud, I can touch the volume down a little piece. Okay, right, so let's get into what we want to talk about today. So part one, we gave you I say a bit of an overview, I would say, of some elements of sacred geometry, yeah, and we went through, for those who weren't here the last time, so if you just joined us for the first time, or you've not seen part one of this class, then check out our YouTube channel. So that class, or part one of this class, is on our YouTube channel. Just search All Eyes on Egypt, Midlands and the North on YouTube, and you can see part one, or check us out on our Facebook page. Part one should be there also. So in the first part, we sort of went through a few things, and more so in relation to this sort of first page of this Partarak. Yeah, we were sort of making the point really about the different types of records. Yeah, so in the context of us, we're talking about prehistory, do you understand? And more so record keeping from the originals of this planet, as opposed to those who came after us. Understood? Yeah, so not in the beginning, but rather at the very beginning and beyond. So this is obviously the world today. Oftentimes the records only go back to, sort of ancient Greek, Latin, in terms of the words, what many of the things that we see in this world are defined as. But there are cultures a lot older than ancient Greece, you understand, ancient Rome, etc. And as we've made the point many times before, the ancient Greeks studied under the ancient Africans. So the ancient Greeks, in terms of their philosophers, the people even till today, where some of the principles that they learned are really the foundation of the sciences that are used today, or certainly the orders within the many sciences that are used today, whether it's science, the sort of medical field, and even construction methodologies, all coming from those, ancient Western civilizations, as they would have them classified today. But it's known that the oldest of those European, or certainly most recognized, studied as students under the ancient Egyptian mystery system. So the reality is that, moreover, if someone's a student and they're being taught by the teacher, and there's a system within that of knowledge, etc., then the teacher or the system of knowledge that they're teaching from has more knowledge than the students that they're teaching. So therefore, the question is that where are the sajalat, or the records of the ancient ones, the originals? Do you understand? Where are those records to inform the world about, simple things like how we got here, how the universe works, and different things of that nature? Understood? Where is that information? So we spent some time last week just going through some of that sort of sacred geometry elements as well. When we say sacred geometry, we are really talking about, geometry in itself. If you look at the word geo and metry, so geo means basically earth, metry denotes measurement. So it's things relating to earth measurement. Yeah, but obviously we might associate with like shapes and things of that nature, like square, triangle, circle, that type of thing. You understand? But it's all things that are measuring one aspect to another as it pertains to Earth. But when we do sacred geometry, what we are using it in that context for is to show the relationship between you, the individual, your relationship to the planet, your relationship to the cosmos. So there are basically patterns that have been encoded, within what we would classify in Wu-Sabat as a divine design. You understand? Also extraterrestrial intervention. You understand? And that's how things are set up within natural nature. Do you understand? So nature is a system, obviously, of governing rules that are autonomous within the environment. But obviously there are there's intelligence, mental intelligence, that is responsible for creating nature in and of itself. So we have, as I say, a system in there where there are patterns and there are codes that show, as I say, the correlation between you as individuals, as I say, the planet and the cosmos out there. And we were going through a couple of weeks ago showing, so the evidence of that. Yeah, and that's some of the reason why we got into this situation in the first place. So we're going to press forward because we've got a few things we need to cover today. As I say, check out part 1 of this series of classes if you want more information. Like, this is just giving you'd be like, well, what's all this on the screen? This is interesting. But if you've got questions, feel free to ask them. Yeah, just getting to where we were today. Right, so broadly, we were on page 2 of this Partarak. Yeah, and where we were, insofar as we had explained to you about the cycle of 24,000 years, known as the equinox. Yeah, and here you see in verse 6, it talks about procession of the equinoxes, and we touched upon it in the last class and in previous classes. So procession of the equinox, a procession is a phenomena that happens for all planets, and in particular in this one, you have an axis an axis of arguably of energy that runs from sort of middle right through the center of the planet, from its top right outwards, so from the North Pole all the way outwards to the South Pole. Understood? So it's an axis or a center point, where the planet, in terms of it's being gravitationally pulled on one side from the sun, and then gravitationally pulled from other planets, obviously within the solar system. So it's, let's say, standing position, understood, or natural position, obviously is between a series of forces which are caught within the sun's gravity, understood? So this axis, like you find with most spinning objects, think about the old toys that you had with the spinning top or whatever, the axis would be the tip to the tip, of the above. And obviously, as it starts to slow down, you'll see that kind of axis lean, isn't it? When it starts to slow down, and it tends to then wobble on its axis. Now, procession is a phenomena where, because of you're getting this sort of gravitational pulling effect on both sides, that axis basically it wobbles. Understood? So it's not perfectly basically moving as it rotates. It's not rotating in a perfect circle. Excuse me. Sorry, it's not spinning and rotating in a perfect circle. There are wobbles, little wobbles, understood, in that circle, and there are many different types of procession. So you could have a 24-hour type procession, do you understand, versus a day, versus and other classifications of time. Now, when you're dealing with procession of the equinoxes, well, this 24,000 year cycle, and in these probably series of classes, we may be getting to the event that is responsible for moving the axis off of its perpendicular position to a now sort of 23.5 degree axis that we see on the planet today, which is why most majority of people have both their strength on the right hand side of their body. And the reason why, if you looked in a mirror, for example, one side of your face, although it appears symmetrical, one side of your face is actually larger than the other. You understand? So your face not quite symmetrical. This is because the precession of the planet, or the axis of the planet, is no longer perpendicular. So we actually are leaning more towards one side, as you see in the percentage sign symbol. Understood? So as a result of that, yes, the previous 24,000 year cycle, yes, was in actuality, changed, because of the event that took place around about 12,500 years ago to its extreme. Now, basically, every time there's an earthquake or major disruption on the planet, it can shift, understood, that axis, but it's by very, very small amounts, understood? But a major event like a comet hitting the planet, for example, sort of extinction level event, can knock this planet obviously off of its axis. And so around about 12,500 years ago, such an event took place, which we'll get into in this particular series of classes. And that's one of the reasons it was one of the reasons that knocked the planet. It's not the only reason, and previous incidents have happened which have shifted the axis of the planet from perpendicular in the sun to help move it to where it is at the moment at 23.5 degrees, but an event to help to move it again off of its axis. And so what happens is now the previous 24,000 year cycle, so that axis is pointing towards several constellations, 12 in particular, which we classify as 24. You understand? So because there's a positive and negative side to each of these particular 12. And so the reason why our ancient ancestors, you understand, the Neteru, as the Egyptians referred to them, were tracking this is because it affects the type of energy or the amount of cosmic energy hitting this planet, which basically can change the vibrational mood, in the sense, or emotional energy in motion on the planet, just like seasons. So as you can see with a season, remember, if it's summer, it's because the axis of the planet, for example, depending on what half of the planet you're on, so let's say we're on the top half of the planet, what we call in summer, is because the axis of the planet is leaning in towards the sun at that particular point in its orbit trajectory, you understand? And so therefore we're receiving more of the sun's energy than the bottom half of the planet, let's say. So if you're on the top half, then that's going to be what's considered to be summer to you understand? Because we're receiving more of the sun's energy. So the fact that seasons work in that way, then obviously we were much more sophisticated in our technology and knowledge advancement at that particular time. And so we were utilizing more than just the energy from our sun. Today we use solar energy, and we use it to heat up water, we use it to provide electricity for housing, etc. But moreover, now people are thinking about, well, what position should the sun, should my home face, you understand? But prior, it was for aesthetic reasons, wasn't it? You know, we want light to come through our windows or whatever, so the rooms will appear bright in the daytime. We wasn't thinking about positioning our houses, understood, to take advantage of, or maximum advantage of, the energy from the sun, understood. But when you look at the ancient Africans and look at our structures back then, when you look in South America and you look at some of the ancient civilizations back then, you understand, Maya, Inca, so on and so forth, you can see that the structures, these ancient structures are taking advantage, of the sun, and then even more suns out there that obviously are with this cosmic energy, it's hitting the planet. And depending on your level of technological skill, knowledge, etc. of the stars would render your ability to utilize, understood, not only energy from our sun, but energy from other cosmic objects, understood. So precession of the equinoxes is when the axis of the, we're looking at 24,000 year cycle, but the axis of the planet has been knocked off several degrees, and therefore instead of this axis going through these 12 houses, as they refer to them in the New Testament, you understand? It says, in my father's house, or Jesus reportedly says, in my father's house there are many what? Mansions, correct? Yeah, but a mansion is bigger than a house. So obviously they're not talking about houses as in physical structures that people live in on Earth. So because, but when you start talking about, excuse me, celestial houses, then that's something different, understood? So in this context, yeah, that movement, or the processional movement or procession of the equinoxes, is describing the one that used to take 24,000 years now takes approximately 26,000 years, rounded up. Some say 25,000, you understand? But that's because it now takes longer because it's on an axis. And so certain events on the planet take place, yeah, every 2,000 or so years, as this axis passes through these different constellations, understood? And falsely, as I say, called zodiac today, you understand? So a new calendar, when the axis of the planet got shifted, yeah, was required, and this is referred to in ancient Egypt as a Dendora, or the star map of Dendora. Yeah, so because on the ceiling of the temple of Ashashtat, in the sense who they call Isis, understood, was a new star map calculating these various different energies that were hitting the planet Earth, and so we track them. So obviously as we move through these different ages, yeah, or what they refer to as eras, understood, yeah, then it was signifying a change. Like, see, you have seasonal change here on the planet Earth, clearly on a annual basis. Well, this is effectively seasonal change, but on an equinox basis, yeah, so 24,000 year basis. And we were talking to you about the different cycles, understood, classified within 6,000 year periods. So within 24, you've got 4 6,000 year periods. Obviously 2, which are referred to as sun cycles, where the sun is tracking closer, yeah, in its elliptical orbit, closer to the planet Earth, excuse me, closer to the sun, excuse me, yes, and then again, elliptical orbit, 2 6,000 year cycles where the sun is tracking farther away or further away from the sun, and these are known as moon cycles, yeah. So sun, moon cycles, or gold and silver cycles, yeah. But precession of the equinoxes is talking about precession change, but it's the 24,000 year cycle in terms of the precessional movement, but now it's become 26 because the axis of the planet, understood, was knocked off from perpendicular to 23.5 degrees, understood. Yep, so we were touching about that, and obviously where the master teacher in this context, Dr. Malachi KZ York, as Parnabab Yanun, is then talking to us about, yes, what the records as we knew them as, yeah, as we kept them, really the true records, arguably, because they're the records of the originators, not of the copiers. Yeah, and we said this before, in that they give the rights to those who copy, not to the originators. Yeah, they give you copyright, but what about the rights of the originators? Yeah, at one point, Parnabab Yanun made an observation that the most documentaries made of differing types, so differing types of documentaries, are about food and ancient Egypt, which is in Africa. So the most different types of documentaries are on those two subject areas. Yes, so the reality is that, you know, excuse me, yeah, they're doing their level best, isn't it? Spending billions, must be billions at this point, understood, into understanding those records, but yet rarely release what those findings to the world. You understand? Other than in a speculative form. So the reason why I say that, because it's not used then to correct modern day education. Do you understand? So it's not like, there are different origins of the different races on the planet, but they follow in a sequential fashion. You understand? So if we are all the human race, as everybody likes to keep running around the same, which is true. You understand? We're all on the same planet in that regard, but there's a sequence to how we got to this sort of modern era, and the different races have different origins. You understand? But their origin is from an originator, understood, and that is the African or the Negroid or Nadjar-u race. They're responsible for all other, were the first on this planet, understood, and all other races arise or derive from us. Understand? That's facts. Nothing to do with black power or anything of that nature. It's only black power if you are the racist. Yeah, so those are because they don't want to accept the fact that a race must be the mother and father of all races. Now, if it was them and we were the ones who were the children, you guarantee they would have been, the Mukasa or the Caucasian would have been putting that in people's face all day long. Yeah, but when they found out, well, they're not, you understand, the original, other than what they want to show on their television, cinema, and media screens, understood, then we find out, well, they want to suppress things now. So our knowledge of our records is considered a mystery, you understood, which is really my story, or what we say of ourselves, our story. Yeah, okay. So let's kick in and crack on in this regard. So it says in verse 7, known to the keepers of the Kadash sacred secrets, this Kawak Tawa, their planet Earth was utterly destroyed before these cycles of 6,000 years. So really, not really going to go into it too much today, but even in their Bible story, and I say there because it's an unproven story, but if you went to Jeremiah chapter 4 verse 24, yeah, and read up to 28, you'd basically look at that and say, well, actually, if you take those verses and place them where they originally were before Genesis chapter 1, the story would read accurately. So it says, in the beginning, yeah, God did X, Y, Z, and basically, excuse me, there were, and they're talking about the spirit moving across the face of the deep. So this is showing you there, despite what the preacher ignorance has said, or teacher ignorance who taught these particular books, because they don't necessarily understand the language. Yeah, the reality is that if there was water there and the planet was already there, then guess what? The solar system was there. If the solar system was there, then of course we've got a Milky Way galaxy, you understand? And then within that, our own universe, yeah, one of many universes. So the reality is that wasn't the very beginning of all things. So it was a beginning, so it within many beginnings. And so those verses in Jeremiah, yeah, put you or give you some preceding information to what took place before, as I say, Genesis chapter 1, which, remember, there are records prior, even in their monotheistic teachings, are referred to as the Suhuf, you understand, where Adam is considered to have his own, you understand, records. So Enoch had his own records, Abraham had his own records, excuse me, Noah had his own records of, that which is preceded or gives more detail in what preceded Genesis, and then within Genesis, you understand, for those who are of those particular degrees. Yes, because if you basically read Genesis chapter 1, it's light touch. Let's be honest. Understand? If you've got the courage to even question that, it's a light touch of the record keeping. Yeah, so it gives you no context, no explanation, who's who, so on and so forth. Understood? And in the first 30 years of Wu-Sabat, when the Amenababre in the personage of Dr. Malachi KZ York was coming to renew our story, you spent a lot of time in those first 30 years from 1970 down to 2000 learning about these monotheistic religions, you understand, and a level of truth, let's say, within those degrees before you step back into ancient Sumer or Sumeria and then started to learn about, well, who were these characters, where in actuality in the Bible they're only known by a certain title: God, you understand, Lord, Lord God, Most High, you understand? So these, well, if we use modern day terminology, extraterrestrials, because they came from above, yeah, known to be from above, coming down to Earth. So they were extra to Terra, which is Earth, astral from the skies. Yeah, and some stayed in the skies and observed what human beings were doing according to that story, and some came down, literally. You understood? And that's the same in what? The Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy. It's the same in the New Testament. You understand? Jesus telling you, I'm from above. It said you are from below. And in the Quran, same said way. You understand? So no difference. What for Old Testament or First Testament, Second Testament, the New Testament, and Third Testament, the Quran, talk about their deities being extraterrestrials in nature. You understand? At a certain point, they're in the heavens, and then at certain points they've come down and interacted, obviously, with man physically. Yeah, not some spirit force, physically. Even fathered children, according to their records, isn't it? Yeah, mixed in with earthly women and fathered children. So you've got this, what would be described as an extraterrestrial, you understand, or divine, as they would have it, yeah, extraterrestrial and humanoid lineage in the planet Earth. Yeah, from a being that reportedly is made in the image and after likeness of God. Understand? So if they didn't have genes, angels, or these beings that came down, then, and interesting enough, how many chromosomes did they have? Because chromosomally, excuse me, they were compatible with the humanoid women or human women, you understand, on Earth. Yeah, insofar as that they could have children with them. So they were compatible according to the stories which he's touched upon there. Understood? And obviously this has happened in Genesis chapter 6. It goes into one of those types of physical interventions, of course, and then the coming of Jesus. Understood? Yeah, and Gabriel, obviously if you really read in between the lines of the story, it's probably not you read between the lines, that's what it says. Yeah, that Gabriel, as a well-made man, obviously entered into Mary and produced another extraterrestrial slash human child. Understood? Maybe that's why the reason why maybe he could do the things that he could do, because he had the power of God, according to their story, flowing through him. You understand? When he became, or something was activated, wasn't it? Yeah, in Matthew chapter 2. When he was baptized by John the Baptist, something got activated, yeah, in him, and then he went on and started doing these particular miracles. So this is their stories, yeah, unproven, understood, but there are records, obviously, of course, of ourselves that sit before that, and so many people emotionally tied to those books, but don't have any proof. One, of the way the originals are, because you're looking in the main of oldest is not originals, if those books even do have originals. Understood? But our records were unknown, in the sense, and so this is important because they were secret even from the people who had the genetic right to read them and genetic right to know about themselves as taught in these records. Yep. So this is here he's saying about, certain records that this planet Earth has gone through many changes, as well as the moon and other cosmic bodies surrounding this, which has led to changes in, basically people who lived on the earth, the society, culture, etc., that they followed, and a number of things had to be rebirthed and renewed as a result. So we went through procession change, and we taught you about the 6,000 year cycle and the 24,000 year cycle, and how to sort of calculate that or understand where we are here today, and the fact that in their biblical records, really a day, but they use the Hebrew word yawum, is not really a day, but it represents a period of time, understood. And actually that biblical story is talking about really a 50,000 years, so an epoch cycle, yeah. And in this context, their days represented a period of 7,000 years. You understand? So the sixth day would have been 42,000 into the 42,000, yeah, the sixth day when their Adam was created. Yeah, so the 42,000, yeah, would have been the sixth day or sixth period, yeah, understood. So the seventh day, or if you add an additional 7,000, yeah, to that 42,000, you get 49,000 years, which when you look, it's got what? It's two 24,000 year cycles within that, isn't it? So in the 24,000 year cycle that we've come in from the year 2000, the first 1,000 years, you understand, excuse me, the first 1,000 years of the new cycle is the 7,000th year of their cycle out of that epoch, yeah, because the 49th thousand year, or getting into the 49, the last 1,000 years of the final 7,000 years is now obviously the first 1,000 years of the 24,000 years cycle, synonymous with the 49,000th, understand, year of that cycle. Do you understand? Meaning to say 48,001 is in the last 1,000 years, isn't it, of that 49,000 cycle, yeah, which is rounded up would be an epoch, yeah, 50,000 years. And certain events take place, so the planet shifts, the cross of the planet shifts every 50,000 years, and this is something that these extraterrestrials, or Anunnaki, in one context of some of the biblical extraterrestrials, as they're known as, understand, observed the shifting of this planet within their observation station in space, and was able obviously to predict the flooding that took place in the Noah story. Understand? And so one of the brothers named Inky wanted to save some of the genes, and the other brother Enlil wanted to destroy, understand, the man on the planet by not informing them that this particular flood or shift of the crust of the planet, which would lead to flooding, he didn't want to inform obviously the inhabitants that they had helped to make, understood, here on the planet. So they obviously didn't intend to destroy creatures who were within the sea, but the ones that were living on the surface of the planet, understood. And then obviously intervened, having a different view, and sought to save certain genetic strands, obviously, i.e. the family of Noah, as well as or Utnapishtim, as they refer to it in their story, as well as the genes of certain animals, obviously, who were there on the surface, you know, so for further recloning later. So, long-winded way of saying that's what we were talking about in part one. So let's get into part two of this class. And so now we can see that in verse 11 it says, I, Parnabab Yanun, was an eyewitness of these Ama'at cycles of years and the recreation of each. So we've learned that there's these events, yeah, some extinction level at times that have led to, you understand, the planet Earth, certainly from a surface point of view, being destroyed, or major change, yeah. So some extinction level events or major catastrophic change on the planet for various reasons, be it wars or naturally occurring events, yeah. And this being is saying that he's a witness to these particular events, yeah. That's the claim. Now we touched upon, didn't we, in the previous part. Yeah, it's being named Amun. Yeah, so which according to their Bible, yeah, in Revelation chapter 3 verse 14, which you see on the screen there, also happens to be pi. Yes, the number for pi 3.14, or first 3 digits of pi. Yes, that he witnessed the creation of God, according to their Bible, the faithful and true witness that he's referred to as. You understand? And all obviously the religions and their prayers in recognition of our ancient ancestor Amun. Yeah, the Hebrews saying Amen, the Torah say Amen, Christians saying Amen, and the Muslims in the sense of that third degree, the Quran, saying obviously Amen. Yeah, so all tying back into this deity Amun Re, understood, who is one of our ancestors. Yeah, and in this regard, so we see there, and we see the Safaf symbol there of Amun. Yeah, so see this reed shape here, giving you the hard A sound, so sound, not sound. This here we see this board here with 30 or so squares, gives you the sort of MN sound. So it's a N sound, like manam, as in the word for, excuse me, yeah, the word for penis, do you understand? So manam, so it's like an MN sound, or M sound, and then we've got the naturally occurring water symbol there. That's a ne sound, so Amun. Understood? Yeah, known as the hidden one or secret one in this context. Now, what we see there is okay. So what we see there is now when we look at the renewer, you understand? So the referred to as a master Yanun. Then we see again some of the same symbols in the excuse me, some of the same symbols within his name also. Understood? We see there's a little bit of correlation. You see the reed, so it's the same reed, but when you've got two reeds, so when one reed would be a sound, and then we've got two or a double reed here, yeah, then that gives us a ya sound, yeah. Some may say Y in English, yeah. So here, palel pa, as many of you have heard before in these classes, but pa, the palel or stool is a pa sound. This is a symbol, yeah, for nabab, and then you've got ya here, so for the two reeds, the nun bowls, so pa, nabab, ya, nu bowls, nu, yeah, so nu sound, nun bowls, understood, and then we've got or nun, so pa, nabab, ya, nun, yeah, so nun bowls, like it's in noon, 12 o'clock, yeah, and then we've got, obviously here we've got the symbol for the heavens, excuse me, patat, yeah, symbol there for the heavens, and the star in the center denotes or links to Sirius, yeah, star constellation, and then we've got here within a symbol here for Earth, yeah, so this elongated rectangle, if that's the name for it, yeah, and then we've got the symbol here for Earth, yeah, these three dots with one filled in the center, yeah, and this, as we already seen, naturally occurring water, yeah, so master of heaven and earth, so that is this there, obviously that's 720 degrees, as you'll be familiar with, 360 degrees of physical knowledge here on earth, and then 360 degrees of spiritual, esoteric knowledge, understood, of the heavens. So qualified, yeah, to initiate that renewal. And so the being is saying, listen, I witnessed, I was there, which is here. You understand? Yeah. So I witnessed these things taking place. Yeah. So this is why, as we explained to you, whilst it may sound fantastical, yes, it's the renewal of our story, yeah, is from above, not from below. Yeah. So their history, starts with, remember we explained this last week, it's really started when they start to write things down. But if you think about it, their discoveries are basically uncovered from things that we have buried. And so their paleontology, their archaeology is from the ground upwards, isn't it? They're digging into the ground to uncover, you understand, which they call discover. Understand? So they're removing the cover of things that we have either buried deliberately or nature has buried through various different, as I say, growth that's taken place in maybe civilizations, as they classify them as, that are no longer here. Yeah, so they get covered in nature in growth. Understood? So they're getting that information from what they discover from things that have been buried. Understood? From the ground up. But our knowledge as animists, in the saying, comes from above downwards, yeah, in the form of outformation. Understood? Down here, and then it becomes, in this planet, it becomes information. And if it's beneath the seas, then we say beneath formation. Understood? So this knowledge of ours is coming from above. Yeah, our records, ancient records, etheric records, records from the mind into the mental records that we're keeping. It's known as Akasha records. Yeah, excuse me. So our bodies, you know, are recording everything do, not only from a DNA perspective, but also our mind, the individual portion, is feeding or linked to the mental, understand, reservoir information. So it's a constant feed. And so, excuse me, this is why records can, or physical records can be informed by what? Etheric records, because you have beings or our ancestors or our higher ancestors who are playing the role of observation. Understand? So they're observers, they're record keeping. Understand? As recorded by or referenced by the being referred to as Tahuti in ancient Egypt. Excuse me. Who is, you understand, is that one Amunabab Akta, understood? Yeah, that's the name of the position or the title, but the ancient Egyptians referred to that being as Tahuti, a vehicle or vessel that not only keeps the records and renews our story, but allows, as I say, many different ancestors, yeah, to speak through this individual, yeah, to give us obviously factual accounts of that which has taken place. And then, as I say, in this context, this day and time, have put that knowledge in books, of many different types, and so well over 1,000, yeah, so that we can understand, yeah, where we are coming from is in the past, present, and future, all referenced as now. So we see there that this individual, you understand, is recording or has access to or claims to have seen certain events that are relevant, you understand, to us as human beings today, in terms of our own story. And what's interesting is that when we look at the sort of configuration of who this being is, so it's saying that you've seen by Shamash Wu Yarak, by the sun and the moon. And remember, we was explained last week that the term pharaoh, yeah, is a sort of bastardized version of the word by the Greeks, you understand, and doesn't really reflect its true meaning in the original language. Remember, that is para, in the sense of the temple, understand? Para, aha, so para, raye, aha, in the sense, so para, raye, aha, so the para temple, in the sense, raye, sun, and aha, moon, in the sense, the temple of the sun and moon. And here's an updated word, older word, I should say, yarak, for moon. But by the temple of the sun and moon is also another way of saying, by way of, obviously, it's also another way of saying pharaoh. Stands to the pharaoh, or yeah, parara aha. It's understood. Is the pharaoh. So the pharaoh reflected, obviously, the link between, obviously, the Parnataru, who are sons, and the link between the people. You see the depiction of Nach en Atun, and that's what they say Ankanaten, but Nach en Atun, understood, and you see him with his family, yeah, reaching out for a depiction of that, showing his connection obviously to the Atharu in that regard, as you are connected to them every day when you walk out, step outside your house, you feel the rays, you understand, that cosmic energy, or the hands of the sun, yeah, reaching out with life-giving, yeah, energy, yeah, or life-sustaining energy, understood. Now, here it says, I am Parnababian from Rizq, yeah, so this Razak or Rizq, where we see that, and this individual was claiming to be from a tri-solar system in the 19th galaxy. Yeah, sounds crazy, you understand? But then now we're seeing, discoveries of tri-solar systems. NASA and other parties on the planet Earth who are interested in astronomy, particularly. And we see more recently, Netflix remake of a book called The Free Body Problem, about a group of extraterrestrials coming to Earth, understood, where their solar system cannot sustain itself, or they can't fix the problem of living on a planet basically that is subject to the gravitational forces of 3 independent stars, understood, and its effective orbit around these stars in the Free Body Problem means that life as they know is not sustainable. There'll be some event or something of some nature that will destroy the life on the surface, and they can't solve that problem according to that fictional tale. Do you understand? So we may get into that a bit later in this class to understand what really is sitting behind that and what the truth is sitting behind that in relation to the Sirius star constellation on this side, so on the 18th galaxy as opposed to the 19th galaxy. But one of the things that was written in the book, in one of the Supreme Mathematics series, called The Man from Paris, was that their orbit, if you look at the orbit of Razak or Rizq around those 3 independent suns, understood, it was described that this is the starting point of our atom. So when you look at the atom, excuse me, yeah, and the motion, of the protons, electrons, and neutrons, understood, that configuration would be the same as the orbit of Rizq, 8th planet within this tri-solar system, and it's, as I say, orbit around those solar bodies, in the sense of 3 solar bodies. So the 18th and 19th galaxies, as we are aware, are linked by way of Sirius. So Sirius star constellation is the border between the 18th and 19th galaxy, and the 19th being a parallel universe to this one, understood. Yeah, so Yanun from Rizq or Razak, yeah, means the word means provider. So the ancient Egyptians referred to our ancestors as Neteru, which are depicted and are sons, yeah, but their true name is really providers, yeah, Rizqiyians, or of their, which are there different types, humanoid as well as esoteric versions in terms of the revolution, not evolution, but the growth of that particular life form on that planet, as well as housing different extraterrestrial races on different aspects of that planet. Yeah, so similar to Earth, it's a linked planet to Earth. Now here we see 2 sides of this particular individual. Yeah, from 2. Not at the same time, but of I suppose millions of years apart in context of events, you understand? But nonetheless, we're reporting here 2 natures. So we see Tahuti here from Orion Sirius and son of Rei-Tat and Rei. Understand? So son of sons from these two particular star constellations. Yeah, it's being the Tututi, and then we see his equivalent there on the Sumerian side, Ningishida from Nibiru, yeah, son of Hisat and Inki. So they're the equivalent characters, but they're obviously, say, millions of years apart from each other. Understood? The genes, whatever, tumble forward. And so, but in the stories, these will be the equivalent characters within those records. What it's denoting in the same being is showing, well, the individual has a nature to deal with both sides or aspects of this type of personality type, because you come in here to teach, understand, or to raise up, yeah, beings to be back in the image and after the likeness of their ancestors, understood? Yeah, the Nadjar-u or the Rizqiyians, yeah, and has to do with both genes within. Understand? And we know in our story that the being named Inki, you see there, the name En, ruler, Ki, earth, whose name is really Nudimud, mixed in with the Sands people in South Africa. So therefore cross-pollinated the Rizqiyan genes now with the Anunnaki genes, understood? And we know that obviously there's some crossover between the two in terms of the sons of Inki as well, having similar names or names certainly familiar or established in ancient, or familiar with ancient Egyptian culture as opposed to Sumerian culture. For example, like Amun, being one of the first sons or the first son of Inki and Hisat. And so it can be confusing in that regard because we're seeing prominent characters across the two cultures, one out of Egypt, understood, which they say building squares, and one out of ancient Sumer, which is Iraq today, who build in circles, understood? And so we see a cross-pollinate of the two cultures there in the design of the one being, understood? Yeah, born or incarnated on planet ET, yeah, planet Earth, sector 24, you understand? Zone 6, because our ancestors count the planet Earth from the outward part of the solar system inward, yeah, as opposed to on this planet we count it from the sun outward. So they talk about the third rock from the sun, yes, but as to talk about it in the other direction, understood, and talk about the sixth planet, you understand, within this 24,000 year cycle. So the planet is 24,000 years, 901, you understand, yeah, in circumference, understood, and this planet based on that 24,000 year cycle, number 24, having numerological significance in this area, understood, and so it's known as sector 24, and the planet, as I say, in zone 6, understand, i.e. the 6th zone or orbit around the sun, yeah, and the planets are considered to be part of the sun. In the sense, the reason why I call it a solar system is because the planets then are obviously sons and daughters of the sun, but they are an offshoot, so they're still part of the sun and actually have the same characteristics. So we have a 600-mile diameter sun in the center of the planet. And so you see a lot now, before, so still teaching modern day science that the planet is in solid, yeah, but it couldn't be 6 septillion tons, which is 6 and 21 zeros, in weight and be solid. The planet would be heavier than what 6 septillion tons would represent. So the planet itself is hollow inside. There's a central sun. So again, like you have a body, you also have a central sun, understood? And the sun itself obviously has a core, yeah, a solar core, atmosphere, and so on and so forth. So the correlation between the three, you see those characteristics there, and obviously you see a lot of these modern movies, Godzillas and King Kongs, you understand, showing this subterranean world there, yeah, in existence, you understand, which, as I say, many records about Agatan Shambhala is a book if you want more information on that to seek that out. So we see here again that we've got two helixes here from this being now who has been dealt as the ability to see these both natures. You understand? In this Negroid or Nadjar-u being, you understand? And so we see the helix of the Mozaku, as we were talking about earlier, and the Rizqiyians, yeah. The Neteru here, where they get the English word nature from, so Neteru, yeah, means overseers. And we see what? Chromosomes here from the Sabaeans, or male DNA here from Orion. Yeah. This in the image and after the likeness, obviously us in terms of the head of the nine, excuse me, yeah, what Sahu, they say in Nuwaupu in Sabaean language, or Pa Mufhamia, you understand? Yeah, who the Greeks refer to as the Enneads, the sacred nine, you understand, or the head of the nine, responsible for the creation of the Negroid race, which we have 9 different physical ethers or species within our race of different hues, you understand? Starting obviously with the Sands people in South Africa, more of a yellow hue, all the way up to the sort of blue-black, you understand, of those in the Congo. So various tiers of hue, you understand, like in the word human, yeah, hue or shade, yeah, within our race. Understood? And as you can see here, we have body, soul, so having that soul connection, a reflection of the mental, you understand, and also the foundation of our, yeah, if you want to say the word religion loosely, religious ideology, being animist, yeah, so we deal with energy first, that we manifest as energy first and then came into the physical, you understand? So ontologists are interested in the source or the essence, but that everything starts with the soul first, yes, so our energy self, or the representative or reflection of the mental projecting downwards, which obviously in the fourth plane of existence is referred to as soul. So we have body, soul, and spirit, and so there's 9 principles, but primarily these are the 3. Giving birth to what? Us as the black race, the brown race, and the yellow races, and what? Our spiritual science of Nuwaupu, you understand? Obviously peaceful in nature. Maybe we're not capable of other things, but we're certainly, our natural nature is peaceful or positive. And as I say, we do with facts, ontology, i.e. the root or the essence of things, and we do facts, and we're always seeking confirmation. Not interested in belief and faith. You understand? Faithful to us would be faith in things that you know, not blind faith by having putting trust in things that you don't know. Yeah, so you have faith in things that you can prove. You understand? So, yeah, you understand? So if I don't know, if I drive my car, I've got faith that the brakes are working. Do you understand? Because they've been checked, or I've checked them, or whatever, and they work. So when I put my foot down on the brake, I've got faith that it works because it's checked. Now things can happen, etc. But that's where you've got faith in things that you know, things that you can prove. Yeah, so in that regard, not blind faith is what they're like wanting you to accept in most of the monotheistic religions, is accept these set of circumstances without any evidence, proof, or confirmation that this really actually took place, and people are dying and losing their lives as a result. Now we see here in the helix of the Anunnaki, or the Anakians as they're referred to in the Bible, we see here Mahu, yeah, or Kamahians, yeah, so the Pleiadians, yeah, so here chromosomally, and then we see here in the image of Adapa in the sand, yeah, as it's referred to in the Sumerian story. And the difference is, remember, by the time you get down to the Adam that they're referring to in 42,000 years, there was a number of different experiments taking place. I think that Adam is a generation, something like 16th generation down, yeah, before they get to the one that they're happy with, or this Caucasian version, you understand, that they're happy with. We'll get more into that story as we proceed through the parts of this class. Yeah, so there we see the opposing, so 6 ether as opposed to 9 ether, yeah, and body and spirit but no soul. Understand? So that link there to the mental is not there. Understand? Or certainly in this being doesn't remain there, so they're cut off. And birthing there two different species of Mukasu or Caucasoid, the red and ruddy, you understand? And then you've got the white race. So biblically speaking, you've got the Adamites, and then here, obviously by way of leprosy or leproma that infected then the genes of this race, now we get the white race, yeah, or clean leper, this old leprosy that they referred to in the Bible, in the sand that was placed in the genes, yeah, they derived from Noah's Noah's grandson, Canaan, in the sand, as obviously his son Ham, in the sand. So out of those genes came this clean leper race, which you can find in Leviticus chapter 14 verse 12. So now it's a kind of man, unnatural in nature, and Zupu, you understand, so that opposing their force. And as we see, they reference to Genesis chapter 6 verse 5, because the intervention, remember in Genesis chapter 6, these sons of God, yeah, came down, yeah, so these Anunnaki came down and mixed in with earthly women, understood? And it gave birth to a combination, obviously, of half extraterrestrial, half deity, half man. And then we're reading the books of Enoch, which we'll progress through in some other parts of this class. They went crazy. So that combination, yeah, gave birth to some real troubling individuals on the planet, understood? Yeah, who eventually, a wild genetic sort of strain. It's very powerful, but consumed had an insatiable hunger, you understand, for flesh. You understand, not only animal flesh, but eventually human flesh. Yeah, this combination, understood? So known as the sons of God. Now, so here we see the theology, so theories, you understand, and faith and beliefs. So you've got an opposite nature, yeah, of beings that deal with facts, yeah, want to know things, confirmation, precision, precise, yeah, versus mythology, myth, you understand, lies and truth versus lies, so on and so forth. So opposite in nature, but what we see is that because the genes have been scrambled in the creation or formulation of sending the teacher here necessary, well, it needed both natures to deal with both natures because the genes have been scrambled. Here we see the same kind of following the same or similar line, yeah, and a bit better description of what's taking place. So we see, and this is a little bit further along than the original, and we'll get into that in future parts to make that even clearer. So we can see here, yeah, lineage of two distinct, as I say, lines. This one, again, as we spoke about previously, this is millions of years difference between them, do you understand, later. But in terms of the opposing or opposite, doesn't mean equal, but it means opposing or opposite, we can see, say, the root seed in terms of looking at the ontology of the content of these two races and what they represent from a energy point of view as 9 ether versus 6 ether into ghost. Yeah, so we see Negroids here. Yeah, Neteru, Ogdoad. Yeah, so describing the fact that we came out of the waters. Yeah, so the Ogdoads in the Sabaean language, yeah, they say Muftaru. Yeah, Muftaru. Yeah, Ogdoad is Greek. Yeah, and then we were in the waters of this planet first, and then came out onto land as Enneads. Yeah, so the Mufhamia, you understand? The Mufhamia, you understand? Mufhamia. Yeah, so we came out of the waters onto land, obviously, and so one is dealing with 8 principles or 8 deities, then the one is dealing with, or 8 energies, and one is dealing with 9, and the same came onto land. Understood? And as we touched upon, Inky mixed in, yeah, and so with those sands people, understand, who elevated out the waters or grew out the waters of this planet. So we've got a cross there of genes. Inky himself, as you may or may not be aware, was of that part reptilian, part Anu seed, so humanoid seed. Yes, because Anu, when they previously came to this planet, mixed in with the serpent people and took a wife named Id, understood, from those people, understood. But her genes, when you read the old tablets, you look at his wife, excuse me, Anton, you look at his wife, understood, and you look at Id, you can see that they look very similar, almost twin-like. So obviously these Anunnaki, as they're referred to as now, do you understand, or Nuna, were capable obviously of manipulating genes. You read about this in the introduction of the Black Book. So clearly her genes were used. If you look at the way the serpent people originally looked with scales, etc., her genes have been manipulated to make her compatible with this being who they referred to as the Most High, named Anu, understood. And this is why we look, Anu and Antum and Id, if you look at Id's father, for example, Sirius, yeah, and you look at the transformation of that Sirius, where Sirius looked like versus what his daughter looked like, you can see there's been some crossbreeding there, understood? So Inky himself was a combination, obviously, of the Anunnaki and the serpent people, and some other genes as well that were used in their travels, in manipulating their physical structure to be able to inhabit certain environments, saying without, on a long-term basis, without the need to wear space suits or things of that nature, like you might see on a Star Trek program, they beam down to the planet or whatever, and they're wearing, a suit because they can't breathe the air of that environment. Well, they would start off wearing suits, but then manipulate the genes or whatever, if they could do, so that beings could they could have a genealogy in the planet that could work or, in a sense, survive there naturally without the need to wear suits, understood? So in the old extraterrestrial calendar, for those of you who either seen or a copy of that, you'll see that the Anunnaki in colour, the way they're depicted, were very dark in colour, but Inky is slightly lighter, in the sense, so he is not considered to be pure seed, Anuna, of a mixed seed, and this is one of the reasons why the conflict arose, because he was the older brother, but it's Enlil, the younger brother, who inherited the throne, because Inky was not pure seed, Inky was mixed, understood? And designed to inhabit planets like this one referred to as Earth. So we can see here that the description of these type of people, and our original height, obviously as the Sands people, 4'5" for the females, 5'4" for the males, herbivorous in the sand, and obviously within that we've got many different, as we touched upon earlier, in the sand, 9 certainly physical ethers in the sand within our race, and obviously we've then mixed in with other people, and so many on the planet will find our genes within them. As we said previously, there's more people on the category of, or in the family of the Nadjar-u or Negroid, understood, than there are people who think they are white. Understand? A lot of those people who think they are white are in actuality more on the Nadjar-u side than they are on the RH, understand, negative side, obviously, which would really be what is classified as true white or true Caucasian. And so we see here that the religious ideology, you understand, is, we touched upon animism, our science, Wu-Sabat, different names, etc. Again, tying us back into the heavens, and so particularly the Sirius star constellation, that bridge between the 18th and the 19th galaxy, as discussed. We see here then on that line the Kama'u, also known as Tananu, which we're going to read about shortly, Anakim, Anunnaki. So we see here this combination of the Pleiadians and these Anakim or Anunnaki giving birth to this Nephilim or Gibborim, or Gibbor. That combination, as they described in their Bible, at least in Genesis chapter 6, as these sons of God came down, understood, and gave birth. That combination gave birth to this Nephilim. So Nephilim is to fall. So they came down here, giving birth to this Gibborim. And then we see here, more so in the image and light, the likeness of the Kamau or the Pleiadians, transparent skin, fur, straight fur, as opposed to hair, transparent eyes. But you see here, tremendous in height, in the sense of 8'5" in height for the males and 7'5" for the females. Yeah, so your modern NBA, everybody seems to want to, or is that everybody? A lot of women seem to want a 6 foot plus guy, but in saying this is where that height is coming from in terms of those original. I think Planet Earth is women is a part of that is probably an interesting read for why females were attracted to that height. Understand? But yeah, this was tying in into a genetic line which would weaken our genes as a result. And so we see here some of the religions here, obviously the monotheistic religions there, and most don't know that their origin, these monotheistic religions, their real origin is in the Celtic religion or way of life. Understood? Wicca. You understand? We see here Druidism is certainly a key within that. And as I say, many Freemasonry, for example, tries to elude and link back to ancient Africa or ancient Egypt. But when you look at the practices for Masonry, then it really ties back a lot of it into Druidism. It's nothing to do with the real ancient Egyptian orders, you understand, and missionary schools sitting back there. That's just more of an illusion to try and create that, or give themselves a little bit of validity, tying into the vine. Obviously, they say the first Mason or master builder was Nimrod of the Bible, in the sense Sargon II. And Sargon II himself is, as we would be reflected today, a combination of the Anunnaki genes and the Neteru genes. And obviously in the story, he was trying to connect back to the old school, the original Napata in the sun, Meroe, that ancient pre-dynastic ancient Egypt science and those deities. That's what he was trying to connect with, hence why he was building this tower, as it said, to connect with the Most High. So he wanted to reconnect, like how you've been born in the Western Hemisphere. He wanted to reconnect back to Africa, obviously of his day, because that was where the original was. But he obviously had the nature also of the, you understand, the hunter, the fiery, Anunnaki. So you have both of those natures within. You understand? It talks about him being a skilled hunter. You understand? So the two natures were in this particular individual, but as I say, wanted to lean back. And eventually that seed made its way back into ancient Africa, ancient Egypt, and had to be reinitiated back in. And so this is what gave birth to the dynastic periods that you have them, 46 dynasties, starting with what they refer to the pharaoh as Nama, or Nama as he's known. Nama, excuse me, is the first pharaoh of those, what is referred to as the dynastic periods. And it's really 46 is 23 and 23 chromosomes coming together, and it's really symbolizing the merging of the ancient Egyptian and the Sumerian culture together. And so prior to that, we're not wearing heads of animals, do you understand, and things of that nature. Yeah, this is more that is more Sumerian, understand, way of life given to them by way of the Anunnaki. That is not original Egyptian. That's why you see Ptah, for example, who is short in height. When you see him depicted, he's not wearing any face or mask over his head. His face is showing. You understand? This is showing you that he is pre-dynastic as opposed to coming from dynastic. in that regard. Now, we see here Zupu, yeah, and we see some of the characteristics, fair skin hue, yellow fur, blue eyes, ruddy skin. So this really is a symbol of beauty on the planet Earth, so it seems, in a lot of instances, and or has been certainly for a while. Blonde hair, blue eyes, blondes have more fun, that type of thing. And you see many black people today showing subservience, yeah, blonde in their hair and don't even know that they're doing that, you understand, show subservience to this particular line, you understand, maybe whatever, for the benefits of this world, but you know, what profit a man to gain the world and lose his soul, understood? So the reality is that is a statement saying that one can lose their connection, understood, yeah, so that soul part, that connection to the mental, when you start doing things outside of your image and outside of your likeness, understood? So it's in that movie Dune, a lot of black people in the movie, but it showed them with blue eyes, yeah, because they sell because of the spice, yeah. But the reality is that when they show black people in those type of contexts, or the thing they like to, if you notice in a lot of movies, they like to lighten their hair color, yeah, show them with fur, yeah, or sort of blonde or even brown hair when their hair is really black. So do a lot of stuff, or change their eye color, you understand? So if you look at even X-Men the other day or whatever, the character Storm, who's from Africa, controls nature, yes, you know, to water it down, because yeah, to not show a black person, true black person, she's got the accent, she's got everything else, but what they want to show with white hair or white fur and with blue eyes, yeah. So they say always tying themselves in to the vine. They're never going to, they giveth with one hand and taketh away with the other. We'll give you a positive image with one way, but then we're going to shut with some negative thing, or put themselves in there so that you can't gravitate fully, yeah. They've always got to be in there somewhere, so you can't gravitate fully, you can't embrace that particular person fully as in your image and after their likeness. They're going to do some kind of manipulation, so it's never fully embraced as positive. Now we see here, again, let me just check if there's any questions. No, can't see any. If you feel free to ask questions if anything I say doesn't make sense to how it needs to be. Yeah. So what we see here now is, again, you're been advised about these natures of these two individuals as well by the nature of Nuwaupu and Zupu. As we show, they turn the N 90 degrees to the right, you get the Z symbol there, so the opposite or opposing force, and reflecting two insects, you understand, the bee and the fly, yeah. So the Nahal and the Zabab there as a fly. So two natures, which again ties back into the two brothers, as we said, Inky mixed in. So that's where the link comes into the Anunnaki in that context. So this is what the Eyewitness, yeah, is putting down those records that Amun Nabab Rayay Akhtar in the personage of Fahutwi, is the personage of Sumia, Dr. Malachi Kabina ZK York in the Saint Okran, yeah, as the if it being come then to inform, you know, in housing Dr. Malachi KZ York to come and bring you that information to us in the form of information to transform us from mortals back into deities again. Do you understand? So that we are outformed to be informed, yeah, so we know things again, and then can have, as described, you understand, we're being given facts and seek confirmation within that. Hence one of his famous sayings, don't believe me, check it out, because that's the nature of our people. We didn't build pyramids on faith and belief. We had to know things, yeah, but how we were able to align structures and buildings with constellations that are, you know, millions of light years away, that certainly in any modern day craft, you know, you wouldn't be able to reach there in a human being's lifetime. So we can see here, say that the witness yeah, for this information as of giving us some relevant information about our past and how it relates to today, is where the witness is coming from in terms of physical genealogy as well as esoteric genealogy. So let's explore this instance. We've got eyewitness, and we've got another term here referred to, or how they refer to him as the observer. Yeah, so the Neteru, yeah, referring to him as the observer. We're going to go to an old letter which touches into this. It's a bit of a read, but useful for us to understand its context. Yeah, so and Murdoch, right? So Murdoch, yeah, one of the sons of on the Anunnaki side, so one of the sons of Enki in this regard, and obviously his hat. So here we see that this combination is bringing us, say, a number of sons on that side. And so as we've gone through different schools, different beings, I suppose, are speaking through and giving us the information about our story. And say at that particular point in time, that's the school that we were in. So this is what is being referenced in this regard. Yeah. So, but nonetheless, irrespective of the titles, the information is still useful for us to see. So it says Emerald writes, yeah, so a recap of events that he claimed happened, yeah, and so we're listening and observing in our own right. It says, so Krill, so we talked about in, I think it was the last part of the proof that we were dealing with, or one of the final parts within the proof, about, obviously, this particular individual, Krill, one of 3 Greys who visited the master teacher as a child. So in order for this physical body to in-house this whole light being, obviously named Yanun, his body over a number of years had to be manipulated, you understand, and reprogrammed in order to house this dual entity. So it would be obviously the personality of Dr. Malachi K.Z. York as the individual, or the human individual, birthed from his earthly mother and father, but then to house this whole light being, the body would need to be physically manipulated from childhood, obviously, to age 25, when Yanun housed him at full time at a certain point, understood? Where he was initiated at the junction of the 2 Niles, as he speaks about in that regard. So the body through the age had to be prepared, you understand? And so 3 characters, Wunupu, Asanupu, and Nabanupu, in the sand, yeah, as 3 Greys, Ramadians, and we'll touch upon them probably in some future parts, were there then to guide this individual and train him and prepare him for the role that he needed to undertake. So this is him speaking to Krill in this context. So said, I asked Krill, who is Anu? And they called him the observer. Yeah, and this is old terminology. Yeah, so we use Ray, or on our side of the family now, we would lean towards the Nadjar-u side of the family. But as I say, as we stepped through the different schools, walking back to ancient Egypt, ancient Sumer, understand, was one of the schools that we passed through. Understand, as part of, as you can see, now we have a genetic link to. So they called him the observer. It says, I know that to be the watcher over the watchers. He said, Awa. I asked, is that God? One said, oh no, not by far. God was a concept created out of the need to know what was already inside. But the fear of the unknown took control when the informers left. And God became fear, the horror, the unseen, the judge, the holy, then holy thing, unseen God who will judge if you don't fear. It is not real. So we understand that, you know, saying this through certainly diligent teaching and doctrine over many years, and saying that God is a concept of man. Man is not a concept of God. Understood? And so this is something that's saying man is created, and so seek out a book called The Beginning, yeah, for more detail on that from your local Horizon Egypt store. Unless there's any questions, of course. It says, now one then said, there is no center to belief, as there is no center to the universe. Yet the observer is at the center. You see, the universe is expanding, I said, but there's no center. They said, wherever you are, that's the center. Yeah, so remember we were, I'm speaking about the past, but we were touching in the fact that, remember, that's what creates the virtual reality, isn't it? Is the fact that when you're born, it's all about you to you, and you are the center of the universe to you. Everything revolves around you to you. Yes, but because when you're born into a point in time where things are already existing, and you don't have visibility necessarily or knowledge of that which came before you. So your reality is virtual because you're only able to see from your point forward, or what's considered to be forward. And so that's why it's a virtual reality, because you are the center of you are the center of the universe to you, but your reality position is not absolute reality, it's virtual reality, because you were born into a point in time and therefore can't see what came before unless somebody tells you and explains it. Understood? So yeah, like I think we gave an example before, you join a WhatsApp group or something, the WhatsApp group may have been in existence, but when you joined, unless somebody clicks a certain button or setting that allows you to see what took place from its inception, your reality of being in that WhatsApp group will be from the point that you were entered into the group, and then forward. It won't be, as I say, from any time before you join the group. So that's why it's a virtual reality, not, if you like a better word, absolute reality. Now, so it says here, so they said, wherever you are, that's the center. Wherever you are, that's the center. Here or 1,000,000 light years away. I said 1 light year is as fast as light can travel for 1 year. 1 year at light speed, and that's 186,272. So he said it changes or alters by the environment it moves in. Yeah, so some will say light travels at 186,272. 272 feet per second. But then other times you'll say, well, okay, 186,272 miles per second. Yeah, so you think about on Earth, the planet's not 86,272 miles in circumference, even, that you're saying you could measure it in that context. So, but feet, is appropriate in this context. But in space, where it's a larger environment, then obviously, it's not saying it's moving fast, it's moving the same speed. But obviously there's less things to get in its way. Understood? So that's miles per second as it's moving, maybe it's in other environments. So he said it alters and changes and alters by environment it moves in. He said, wherever there's an observer, it's at the center of the universe. Yeah. So I said, what is an observer exactly? Why is an observer at the center of the universe? He said, because you are there and here already, the present and the future at once. The observer turns future into past, makes history of possibility. Again, I said, then what's an observer? And he drew an open air, a zero, and called it a dense. He said, 0 is for observer. All around and from it is the universe, the observable universe. Pointing with his thin long finger, one of only 4, he said, here at the edge is the farthest from the observer. The red shift becomes infinite. The red shift becomes infinite, changes shape to 2 zeros. He then pointed with his finger and made a small dot around the 0. He said, these, are different colored suns or stars. But here is the observer's dilemma. Baba, that's what they called me. He occupies the center of the observable universe, which is bound by its own primordial past. He said and tapped the drawing of light in midair from the observer's viewpoint. What part of the universe is oldest? He asked. The speed of light is finite. Most stars the observer sees are younger than his own sun. Younger, still more distant, they are. A star 19,000 light years distant is 19,000 years closer to the beginning of the universe. 19,000 years less older than the observer's own space. At that, they were gone. I noticed the sun coming up. They appear and just disappear or walk right through walls. And there they are. The next week I did not see them. Then they were there. This time they had a female looking one with them. They called her Arnid. I knew there were others looking at me. I could feel those big black eyes. They always stood in a crystal-like green light. Well, they were back and greeted me, Rahubat, and seemed to look at each other. They also made this sound like wings in wind. She also had 5 fingers. They were all brownish in colour, and she was peach coloured. I asked, why you? Why you here? They said, you came to us. I said, no, I mean you and not the others, the Rizqiyians. They said, sometimes all at once will need be for this. The screen reappeared again just as she left it. So I pointed out the 0 or black dot in the middle. She said, not the middle, the center. Middle is midway. Center is point. I tapped the dot in the center, right. Here at the edge is the youngest universe. Maybe the universe second after its moment of birth. The past, while here at the very center, is, he said, the present. So where on the chart, Baba, do you find future? I said, not shown. He said, very good. Yet time passes. The universe expands, it emanates. The future, not yet existent, emerges from this point. This absolute spaceless point from the observer as a spaceless point in its own subjective universe. I said from me, he said from any observer. They were gone again. I sat and said to myself, all time radiates from me. The future was deep inside me. I heard a voice say, right. But they were not there, just a voice. I said, but you can only see the past. My eyes looked out, not in. I asked, does the universe expand? Does the universe expand? Or does the observer shrink? He said it amounts to the same thing. You shrink into the future and collapse into it. So the observer collapses into its own singularity, shrinking away from the universe at large. Gone again. When they returned, a tall Rizqiyian was with them. Long white robe, silver white, long woolly hair, beard, eyes. I could tell they served him. Their big head never looked up at him, always humble. I started to ask, but he touched his finger. He had 5 to his lips. I was not to speak. Listen, he said in a strong, deep voice. That made me realize the little ones never really spoke. Their slit mouths never opened. It was mind to mind. Well, he said, if you look into the uncreated world, he said quietly, it looks back at you. So you have always said, why me? How did you find me? Why come to me? It's a mirror world, Yanun. We did not find you, you found us. I started to say, and he said, shh. You have a gift for turning your eyes inside out. Others see this in your eyes and call it stress. Your voice is unlike any other. It vibrates in more than one existence. We hear you and see you because you want us to. So we use you for this great work. What you see of us from this point is what you see of us from this point in time is the uncreated future, from a place where the human race has reached its last incarnation from the end of the material world, or the end of all worlds. So these little ones are human, a future not yet created. You have a light to them, be able to see the future. So you call them, and your inner being asked, how can I save my world? By becoming you. You're an angel to them of the past, an angel of infinite possibility, and other beings want to prevent you from fixing the future by imprisoning your mind and body. I said, I don't want to be this. I wanted to cry. I wanted to be human like all others. I don't understand. He smiled and said, look at me. You are many people. We have implanted in you all the answers. You hold the key to human existence, the past to the future. You are the center, Al-Qubt. I said, I don't want to. Too much suffering and pain. He said, never think of yourself. Excuse me. His lips touched again and said, we will cure malaria for you. Don't fear nothing. We are always with you. We have no time. Think us and bring us. And I show other you, yes, for you, we will come when you are in need. Then he said, you don't have to understand. You see, one doesn't have to understand in order to look. Yet one has to look in order to overstand. I looked and saw the future. I must tell you what I saw. There is so much more I wrote down, but when they moved me, I got rid of it. But it's in my head. I won't write it. I will tell you all, they said, but I had to share this with you, my beloved, from Baba to all. So what we see here is, interesting enough, a very powerful letter there. You take it how you want to take it. But here we see is the interesting part that they were making some observations with the Netharu as well as the Greys, who once worked for the Netharu and were given their freedom at a certain point. They used the scouts. We see here that the observer, as we see it as, can be all of us, you understand, at the center of the universe, or our universe being the center of it is to us. Now, the interesting thing is that what they are explaining to us is that this point, let's say this is the point of origin, you understand, and that point of expansion, this would be the present, and where we are at the outer edge of the expansion will be the past. Yeah, so, but we here, let's say we're at this particular point of the expansion where our planet is positioned in relation to our universe, we would see this as the now. And because this event, as we would see it, took place prior to us, we're considering this point the past. Understood, yeah? But what they are explaining is no, this is the point of origin in the birth of this universe would be the present or the now, you understand? And this point here is the past, yeah? And in actuality, that future they're speaking about, unwritten yet, is obviously in this direction because it's relating to the universe collapsing in on itself, you understand? The event, obviously, which is, well, it's happening, you understand? But obviously to its apex has not happened yet. So the uniqueness of this being named Yanun is because, as I say, outside of our ability to observe what is going on from our vantage point, well, this being named Yanun, or the configuration of this gene, sets of genes known as Yanun, as I say, is able to see outside of the virtual reality of where we think of ourselves, let's say we're at this outer edge as the past, he's able to see obviously in both directions, understood? And hence why I was able to connect, or is able to connect with the Netharu and then act as a voice for them to see what is to come, as we would describe it as, or the future that is to befall us, or what we are going to encounter. and then clearly obviously change that by using information provided by the Neteru to change the present. You understand? So to change the present, which we are referring to, which they are referring to as our past, but it's obviously present to us. So in this context, if you think about it as a let's try and make it so it's less a bit more grounded. You're expanding outwards, isn't it? As an individual, as a human being. Now, if somebody comes along and says to you, "Hey, stop eating, those Big Macs. Stop eating those Big Macs. If you continue to eat those Big Macs, you're going to die from a heart attack." Understood? Now, at this point, you're expanding. Let's say you're eating Big Macs, I don't know, from age 15 or whatever, and somebody comes along to you at age 25 and tells you, "Hey, stop eating this stuff. It's not good for you. It's going to cause you a heart attack. You're eating 3 of them a day." Understood? You're on a highway, to death. Now, obviously, at a certain point, excuse me, you're going to get older, and so your expansion is going to be stop, and you're going to start now to shrink, as we see us as older people past a certain vantage point. Generally speaking, maybe in around 50 years old, we start to change. You understand? So we were getting obviously expanding, growing, and we stop at a certain point. And as we get older, you understand, that expansion stops and we start to shrink. So the reality is that if the change is made, in what they are referring to as the past, then it can have a positive effect, understand, on the future if the intervention is taken and acted upon at the correct time. So some have seen our future already, the adverse forces, and want to see us destroy ourselves. You understand? And not fulfill our true destiny, as you remember, as it was expressed in the Holy Tablets, that the fact of that your true destiny, understand, is to return back to the source where you came. You understand? So we want to return back to the original source or point of origin. You understand? Which we obviously are destined to do as sons of sons. You understand? And as a universe, obviously, of course, within our own right, but bringing all of the knowledge that we observed in our own observable universe back to make the whole or that point of origin that much greater. So here we can see, as I say, interesting observations about what we are referring to as past versus future, and how interventions can change our destiny. So the word destiny, as you see, is linked to the word destination. Understood? So in terms of this origin, if there's no interference, then we're going to become what we're supposed to be. But someone understand that can interfere with that. Understood? And then you're now not what you're supposed to be. Understand? So one's past, or this outer edge of growth will directly correlate to affect the future that's not happened yet. Understand? And so this being has the ability to observe, in both directions as being expressed, and so therefore they can utilize him to feed information through, because they know what's coming. You understand? Having observed this many times before, as we express there in the Partarak, as it shows in the records, you understand, the original records, because you've seen this happen many times before. So what is being shown as prophecy biblically, actually there's a science to it, because we've observed this in the same situation many times before in other species, other races, other life forms, etc. It happens to be your turn now in terms of your state of evolution, where it's saying, you're at the last point of incarnation, to make the necessary corrections before you must grow or evolve, and transform into what you were meant to be, i.e. us as your children. So, now, Any questions?
Yes, there is a question, and this question is from Alia, and the question says, from reading when it said that the master teacher is said to have found them, not them finding the master teacher, was this intentional on the part of the master teacher? Also, they say they will use the master teacher for further works. What does this mean?
In terms of, okay, no, thank you. So in terms of the first bit, this is what the interesting part is. Obviously, the configuration of those genetics, led to this unique individual that had that ability to reach out. Now, we're reading about it and it may sound fantastical in this regard, but remember, as we taught you in the class a couple of weeks ago, and it used to feature as part of all of our introductions, remember that the feminine forces, or sacred feminine forces, or female forces of Wu-Sabat appoint, the Amunabab Rayay Ahaktar. So it's the forces of nature, feminine forces of nature, that appoint the one from amongst us. Understood? So in that context, understand, nature appointed the specific individual, you understand, in terms of those configurations, appointed a woman, she gave birth to, with obviously the help of the father, you understand, sacred masculine, and they gave birth to the combination of those genes in June 26, 1945, that was uniquely qualified or appointed to undertake this role, understood, and be able to reach out in that regard. And so these Rizqiyians or beings then were able to work through this particular vehicle or vessel in that regard. Now, does that sound fantastical? Well, look at your own existence. Yeah, out of 777,777 sperm, how is the one that was appointed or anointed with the soul force, out of all of those sperm, how is it that you are the one that makes it to the egg? Yeah, so among all of those life forms, you were appointed, understood, by natural nature, the one with the star of life, the one with the soul connection. You are the one that makes it to the egg. Yeah, so in our own lives, that appointment, because we're here and we exist and we have that, as Nadjar released, that ability to connect, and so inherently, even though based on lifestyle, ignorance, choices, sometimes we may lose that connection. It has to be restored, understood. But the reality is you were appointed. So on the outside of ourselves, in a sense, yes, when we're looking now in the world, in the observable universe, one was appointed amongst us, understood, and then, as they say, in a sense, reached out or made the connection, or the being was able to in-house that particular individual because he had the certain configuration, as we see there, able to see in both directions, and then was, let's say, configured and then trained to be able to in-house this being referred to as Yanun. When it says further works, well, it's describing, remember this letter was written some time ago. I think it's well over, what are we in now, 24? So, it's written certainly 2004 or 5, that kind of time, do you understand? So it's an old letter. So the works, or to work through, is to continue the work of informing, you understand, those of his race and those others who are interested, who may be not of the race, about that which is to come and that which they must do in order to transform themselves. Understood? So inform, outformed to be informed, to be transformed. Yeah. Any other questions?
No further open questions.
So this was a kind of a long way round of saying why we have a witness to certain events, but also importantly, you have an observer. So everybody themselves also is an observer, but they're really looking for, well, who is the observer of the observers, insofar as thinking, okay, well, there's this most high or higher being, understood, that we all are aligned to, and in reality it doesn't exist in that way. You understand? Of course there are more powerful beings than ourselves, but it's not a case of, in that regard, there's respect, of course, but it's not a case of subservience or worship. We are a part of the whole, and the whole is a part of us. Do you understand? And so, of course, we have higher ancestors or beings, clearly, who we are wholly respectful of. Do you understand? And we are grateful of, as a person is grateful to their mother and father, understood, if they know who they are, of the life that they gave them. Do you understand? Just even for that reason, even if they're not even decent people in life in that regard, but you respect the fact that, you understand, you wouldn't be here, or you wouldn't certainly have stepped into existence if it wasn't for them coming together. So in that regard, so we have obviously a link to the observer, but because of our weak spiritual skills, you understand, or esoteric skills, we're not able to tap into the whole of tapping into existence in that way. So we're seeing things, or we're trapped behind the 9 ball, i.e. that we're seeing everything within existence from our planet, or from our planetary perspective. Do you understand? We're not seeing it from the perspective, you understand, of the center. Do you understand? In that regard, to see the reality of how things are, we're still caught up in the illusion, understood, of life here. So even when we're showing star constellations and star maps and things, you always have to remember that this is from the person standing on Earth looking up, oftentimes. Yeah, so it's from that vantage point. Yeah, so even with that, it's still illusionary. Yeah, but this is indicating that no, that this individual, this Parnabab Yanun, in the person of Dr. Malachi KZ York, uniquely, in a sense, was gifted with the ability, and that then to teach us also to gain that ability to see how the observer, in a sense, or see how they see things from the very origin of things. You understand? Not just from our own illusionary vantage point. You can compare the illusionary world to the reality, in a sense, outside of our illusion from any point within existence, to overstand, in a sense, not understand, to overstand, yeah, what in actuality was taking place and when. Understand? So this is important for us because, as we said already, it's not just a case of when you pick up an ancient tablet or something of that nature, just translating the words. Yeah, you have to understand, well, what was the culture? You know, what was the understanding of the people at that point? Who wrote it? What was in that person's mind, etc. So the person keeping the records, yeah, in a sort of unbiased way, you have to understand, well, even the language that they're going to be using at that particular time, it can only be, and if they see something, let's say, that's more advanced, then you can only use the language that you're using today. If you see something, you don't know what it is, how do you describe it? Yeah, if you observe something, you see, well, I don't know what that is. Well, how would you describe it? Especially if you've seen something that you've never seen before, or that's never been seen before, from maybe a more advanced culture, older culture, so on and so forth. How are you going to describe it in the language? You're going to use your own words, your own descriptors, but that may not be what the thing is. So then if people were reading what you translated or you observed, in saying many thousands, even not, but then it could be thousands, it could be decades later. Yeah, what did he mean by that? What did she mean by that? Yeah, and if you were not had no knowledge of it, then your observation may not have been accurate to what the thing was. You're only basing it on what you observed. So the ability to bring this knowledge together in this way, add context, see it through the eyes of those who were there, do you understand, with overstanding of what was taking place, its context, i.e. before the point of the incident, do you understand, to lead what led up to it, why, how, so on and so forth, yeah, is key to being able to teach others with into overstanding of what took place. Yeah, not just because in today, what are they doing? They think they're looking at the past. You understand? When they're digging up a certain instance of things which already happened and trying to piece together and speculate as to what the people are doing, what they live, what their mindset was. But that's because you're looking at things in the ground that are dead. You're not looking at the etheric records, obviously, and what was recorded, which is still living, in a sense, in the form of energy in that regard. So, capture within the environment. So, this individual saying, yeah, I witnessed this Ama'at cycles of years and the recreation of each. And then 12 says, Nuk Kawuna Tunan Aya Kawun Hunen. I was there, which is here, when the words were spoken, let the sun's rays shine again, at the time of the great destruction of this planet. 13, because the Shakhasu people misused their Sakhamat powers given to them by Parnatharu, the Nazdars, Nathars, Neteru from above. 14, they were mixing their Natatat seeds, doing daweh, evil acts, avoiding what was right, and were good. 15, at the time the great Tathbar, destruction of the planet Earth, the gates of heaven had Patuha, opened and raged above Earth, as Tananu, Draconians from the Draco star system, warred in the Patatut, sky, heavens and celestial skies, to take possession of the planet, to Nagud, rule and lead. 16, so the great alchemist created a wasaf formula to feed the Hamam Washashu, human beasts, who were bara, food from the invaders from Draco. So, we're reading about a number of different actors here, but parties, let's say, to this events that are taking place. And, well, who are they? And, who's who really on the planet Earth, and what's their relevance, in relation to this. So we have to do a bit more deep diving, understand, into what's taking place. You see here, 17, many Tananu Dragonians did eat of the human beast, and Mawuta died from the poisoned Jasad flesh. 18, their Kharadu offspring children, their chosen, also ate the poisoned Jasad flesh and died as well. And the offspring of the Par Kokasu, the Caucasoids, also became Khala, sick, and many died. 19. Khatatu bodies laid all over the Sajanat caverns and mountains and spread far and wide. So, we see that we're being informed about an event, and we see various different star constellations mentioned, and species, I suppose, extraterrestrial species mentioned in this regard. So, just in terms of a quick revisit, what we see is in this side profile of the Great Pyramid at Giza, and interestingly enough, when we will touch about the quality, we see the 3 Great Pyramids, and we see a 4th pyramid, you understand, in the complex as well, you understand, and other smaller ones in the complex, you understand. So here we see the main structures. We're seeing other ones, in the context. So remember, our whole thing, excuse me, was to reflect the build of the heavens here on Earth, isn't it? Excuse me, as above, so below. Yes, context. So, what do we see here? So we see on this side profile of the Giza Pyramid, the link there in the King's Chamber. So you got here King's Chamber. You got the Queen's Shaft. Understood? So Queen's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, King's Shaft, Queen's Shaft, and we see it there in reality. Yeah, we see this internal structures within this major structure, so contained within, and there were at one point no doors, yeah, to allow one in that regard. So the question is, why do people get in and out? So yeah, so we see this aligned with certain star constellations. So here, interesting enough, we see the link to Orion or Sahu, you understand, or Sahat, some say in the Sabaean language, and we see various different Safaf representing, yeah, this star constellation. Yeah, we see, and this is related to the King's Chamber. The Queen's Chamber we see is aligned with the Sirius or Sirius star constellation, which we see there, known as Sabat, or in this context here, Sabthet. Yeah, so we see the again Safaf in relation to that. Both of them, interesting enough, showing, yeah, this star configuration there, which is interesting because we see the same thing in the Patat symbol in Parnababi Nun, when it says Master of the Heavens and Earth. When we looked in the Patat symbol, isn't it, we saw that star there in the sky, yeah, relating to the Sirius star constellation. Yeah. So we see here on one side we've got that Sirius star constellation, which was a free star constellation, but Sirius C collapsed, and so we have A and B in a particular orbit, if you remember. Yeah, now binary star system, which looks like an egg. Yeah, and this star constellation is associated with the male deity, or it was depicted as male, Asar, and this star constellation is associated with the female deity, Ashashtat, who they refer to as Isis. You understand? So we see this on both sides, the origins of our DNA, obviously here on this planet. But on the other side, we can't ignore the fact that, well, our ancestors linked. Yeah, so we've got these two halves contributing, and then we see it linked then into the Draco star constellation. You understand? As you see there, 18 Sun, yeah, star constellation, which looks like a what? Now we're looking at it there, it looks like a semen. You understand? Or sperm, spermatozoa. You understand? Known as semen, or contained within semen. Yeah, so these waters here, but here's the 18 star configuration in terms of the large one, referred to as Draco. Yeah. Now, we spoke to you about this G previously, and how it's a combination of obviously the circle, the science of the circle as well, and happens to be, it represents 7, but looks like a 6, and then you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They find it as a 7th letter of the alphabet, understood, but it looks like a 6. You understand? And you sort of tie everything up. It's more like a 6. You understand? Actually, if you turn it upside down, although yes, it looks like a 9, but it also looks like an upside. Looks like the small cased G also, doesn't it? Yeah. So we'll come back to that in a sec. So just some re-observations here. We've got the Orion's belt, yeah, so the 3 central stars that are tied in, Al-Nilak, Al-Nitak, Al-Nilam, and Mintaka. We have 3 central stars, and certainly we've also got Sirius down here. So this was, other than it being depicted as the hunter Orion, this would have been the way in which we depicted it, as an upright, you understand? Yeah, temple of the stars and moon, or temple of the sun and moon. Yeah, so as an upright pharaoh, you understand? As I refer to it as. So we see here, some key sort of things here. So we've got the 3 central suns. We've got here known as the Orion Nebula. Yeah, and so within it, we can see again this correlation between us as human beings coming from this particular star constellation, in the sense, which is a male, and then we've got obviously the link there to the Sirius, which is obviously the representing the female. We see the configuration of stars there in the Draco, or referred to as Draco star constellation, and there's other elements there. All remember as it appears from the observation from the Earth looking upwards. So, as we touched upon, so the question is, well, why are our ancestors pointing these chambers at these 3 different star constellations? You understand? So obviously these are more than clues being left. The whole design is, being gifted in a certain way. Yeah, it's obviously should poke our curiosity. So we've got this 7th letter of the alphabet that looks like a 6. Yeah, and it's a combination of the circle and the square. Yeah, so yeah, G as in geometric, or geometry. It's also G for Gaia, genitals, genes. Understand? So there's a lot of G's pertaining to us here on Earth and our physical life here on Earth. Now, when we look at the numeral for 6 in Arabic, we can see there that it is the number, what we would describe as 7. You understand? But it's really 6. So there's some confusion there, because now the 6 and the 7, which in I suppose in numbers today would be considered to be independent or separate. So 7 is one thing, 6 is another thing. But in actuality, when we go back into this ancient language, we see that there's no real number, there's no numbers in these languages. So they're using letters to represent numbers in this context, and the 6, or the equivalent 6, is really 7 here. Yeah, and so 7 letter with the alphabet for us looks like a 6, but here the number 7 is the representation of the number 6. Understood? Yeah, so we can see here a bit more clearly. Yeah, we see that Zayn is this sort of 666 is associated with the number 6, but it looks more like the symbol for 7. So you see 7, and then talk about 7 days of creation, don't we? Insofar as the so-called biblical records talk about 7 days of creation, which we know is really what? 6, because their deity rested on the 7th day. Understood? Yeah. So we can see here, this sort of symbol, Zeta. Zeta Reticuli, which is a galaxy. So this Zeta obviously links into the 6, as we can see there, and even there you can see it looks in its shape or configuration. That letter, it looks like a serpent, and as you see there in the extract from one of Master Teacher's books, it's obviously a symbol of a serpent or a snake. Yeah, and obviously ties into the Zionists and so on and so forth. So, but interesting enough, that's the sort of some of the hype. 666, what's been associated with. But in actuality, we see here, this is an extract from Wikipedia, that the number wasn't 666, but rather 616. Yeah, so a mistake basically in. You can see here as the arrow is pointing where it's been referenced in this particular papyrus. You can look this up and read this in your own time. But the number was 616. Not 666. It's the number of the beast. You understand? Especially in Revelation chapter 18, interesting number. Yeah. And basically 666 is really 616. Yeah, so a mistake. Those by the translators in that regard. But we see here, look. So we can see, and we see the emergence of this number. I've seen a few, rap videos of people wearing them in music videos and stuff like that. So this 616, obviously see it here in this Marvel sort of icon infographic thing. So we see there, 616 being used, which that that's really what that ties into. Now, what we see here is, let's go back, we're going forward. Yeah, we'll come on to that. So we see here, as I say, this sort of intervention there. 666 is 616, really 616. So what does the 666 represent? Yeah, so let's revisit that shortly, but just keep that in mind for the moment. So we can see in our story, this is an extraterrestrial migration map, as it relates to how different races, I suppose, have come out of Africa, and from us, and then how, I suppose, those genes have been interfered with, manipulated to produce different, obviously, races or species on the planet Earth. Now, we see here that our origin starts from bases that our ancestors set up in Antarctica, you understand, and a place called Egg Island, which I think in a previous class we took on Google Maps and showed you what that looks like, because it looks like an egg. Understood? Now, if we're following up the map, what do we see here? We see that an emergence there or the seeds or the sperm are placed into or the ovum placed into, or the genes, the bacteria, single cell, eventually went into single cell amoebas and other complex life forms, were seeded here in the waters, obviously by our ancestors. Understand? The Parnathari. Understand? But interestingly, we see labeled in connection with charts Anunnaki, Pleiadians, and Draconians. Understand? So 3 different particular interactions with extraterrestrials. Now, the first origin onto land, out of the waters, eventually became the Sands people that we see there in South Africa today. Understand? The original Nubians. And what do we see? We see that a divergence, let's say, of us, with some now going to America, which is the true Atlantis. You understand? Like you see in the word Atlanta, a place that we went on vacation, and so you don't see the Atlantis on there. You understand? And it's really Alaluntwi is the title there, representing the Twi part represents the 2 Americas, understood, that was separated obviously by an explosion, which may be where they get their Atlantis myth from. But Atlanteans, the true Atlanteans, are really the Anasazi, understood, who the Greeks referred to as the Olmecs, you understand, on this continent many millions of years ago, you understand, which called now America, which is, is a composite of 2 words, isn't it? The Arabs referred to the Anasazi, understood, or the rubber people, as they were known, understand, or the Olmecs, as Amirs. It means rulers, understood. And then you see that Ika there is really Inca, understand, because you had a combination of different invaders coming into the land, and one came in was the obviously Chinese, and they because the Chinese suffered from Mongoloidism, which is this additional from their own ancestors who had additional 47 chromosomes, which was not quite compatible with the 46 chromosomes that we had. So they developed what they referred to in probably an older word, but Mongoloidism, which is why, which is similar, obviously, to what you see in children or people with Down syndrome. Irrespective of race, they all look a similar type of way. So it's a derivative from, as I say, human beings mixing with extraterrestrials whose genetics were not quite compatible with ours, which led to some defects there, as we can see. So, notwithstanding, some mixing took place between the Chinese, obviously, for a man named Hu Shen, who migrated over from China into North America by way of the Bering Straits, through Canada, and obviously downwards. and encountered us, and I suppose we showed some compassion and agreed to mix in our genes with them, which gave birth to one set of Native Americans, or American Indians, as they call them today, as a Hopi. American Indians are Hopi Native Americans. And the same as the first tribe, and they were not supposed to mix in with other people with defective genes. You understand? And so they wasn't allowed to live in North America with who they can maybe consider to be their gods, but they were sent down to South America. Understood? So, so these obviously, or those groups of tribes that mixing took place, obviously is known as the Incas. Yeah, that's one of their names. So Amir Inca is the reason why it's called America, and the rulers of the Incas, which were these sub races of Anasazi, where various mixing has taken place, where we've donated our genes really to help out these group of explorers, as said, by way of Hushen. So we can see here that some diversions taking place into the Americas, and then we've got a diversion here where people have migrated further up from South Africa up all the way and sent to the top of Africa. And so maybe it's not North Africa as it is today, but north, obviously, of Africa, very different to North Africa today, which is seen as more of the countries that have been invaded, is it? Tunisia, you understand, Algeria, that type of thing, where you've got this strong Arab mix of individuals or people, often with the original people being treated like second-class citizens, you understand, in that regard. Any questions?
No open questions at the moment.
Okay. Right, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to stop there, because what we're going to do basically in the next part, well, the next time I'm teaching this class, is we're basically going to walk you through who the Neteru, and how did we get here by way of that situation, so a bit of an overview of that. Then we'll start with the breakdown of the Draconians, or Arconians. Arconians, who gave birth, obviously, or started a project here to give birth to the Celtics, you understand? But then we also have to teach you about who these individuals are as well. The Pleiadians, and how that mix has come around. So we see Celtic, Celtic, and then Celtic. So 3 simian genes coming from the Sirius star constellation, when Sirius D collapsed, but beings relocated. You understand? These simian beings, or Bigfoot, it came down 3 different species into 3 different color sets of human beings that are coming out of this. We see out in one, we've got the Pleiadians, linked obviously into the Russia and their own sub species there, dealing with Asians here. On this side of what's being referred to as Asians, or American Indians in that regard, because of the mixture of the Chinese and so on and so forth. So we've got various different projects which are taking place across the planet, you understand? And so you really know who the actors are, so go into who these people are, what their story is in connection to the planet Earth, and then why this obviously ancient war took place, you understand? So we'll start with Neteru next time, then be discussing Draconians, and then go into the Pleiadians and see how this all sort of comes together to the relevance of the events that are taking place in Partarak. Was there, which is here. Okay, right. Any other questions? If not, I know we started probably a bit later today. I think it's a natural point to conclude for now.
There are no other questions. I can't see anything else in the chat either.
Okay, I see a raised hand. Okay, person wants to come through live.
Oh,
That's what they're asking.
Let's have a look. I can't see that here on my device.
Okay. Okay, Aaliyah, if you want to ask your question.
Oh. Aaliyah. It appears Aaliyah has a question.
She's unmuting herself.
Aaliyah, if you'd unmute your microphone, then you can ask your question.
If not, move on to the next person. Patar wants to ask something. Patar, you want to ask your question, please?
Tua, can I be heard?
You can. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Can you explain why Egg Island was selected?
Sorry, repeat your question. I didn't hear that last bit.
Can you explain why Egg Island was selected?
Oh, Egg Island. Okay, yeah. Understood. Well, what you see is this correlation. When we look at Egg Island, as the name suggests, it looks like an egg. And our genes were transported here by way of a creature known today as a dolphin, which has a similar size. In fact, it's like larger brain than human beings. And so the word dolphin itself means womb. And so it was transported to the Sirius star constellation, implanted, and that creature was placed in the waters here and then defecated in the waters, which then led to I suppose simple cellular life being in the waters, but then developed into more complex life. So when we look at if you looked at a picture of Egg Island, in the same as you go on Google Earth and look at a picture of Egg Island, you see in actuality that Egg Island looks very much like the orbit of the Sirius star constellation you see on the screen there. You understand? Which is also an egg, or looks at the orbit, I should say, of the binary star system makes an egg. Understand? So that at that particular point in time, which is before the last ice age, that particular continent was fertile. It wasn't as it is now, like an ice wasteland as it appears to be. This was a very fertile and let's say very how can I say what the word is? Yeah, a fertile, in a sense, a very perfect sort of piece of land, optimum for a base. So that's where they selected it, and then placed the cells and this creature in the Indian Ocean, and then it arose out of what we call South Africa today. So that's where we got thrown onto land by way of a large tsunami that took place, which threw us as mermen and merwomen, but the merwomen got thrown onto the land in the first instance. The women had larger lungs than the males, so were able to survive onto land, you understand, by breathing less dense air. So yeah, broadly, the Antarctica was, I suppose, an area that wasn't inhabited previously, and its correlation in terms of its shape, when you look at it, obviously they must have seen that nature was giving a signal to say, hey, this piece of land looks in correlation to where the original DNA looks like in the heavens, and so nature was giving a sign here on the planet Earth that this location was the optimum one to where to place the genes in the water. Yeah. Any other questions? Is that clear? You want to follow up?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes. So just to be clear, would it be safe to say that it was selected, for the because of the fertility of the of Egg Island?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that's where they put the base, but they place the genes in the waters from that location. But if you look at the shape of it, its shape correlates to the shape of Sirius. So in our culture, I suppose we have a characteristic of matching that which takes place in the heavens to here on Earth. So yes, its location, its fertility, but also the shape was an indicator in nature that, hey, this was a special place, understood, and so that correlation was there. Certain times as like with the ancient Egyptians as well, you see that they would build pyramids in locations where you see natural pyramid formation in the forms of mountains. Do you understand? So we were spiritually sensitive to what nature was telling us. You understand? And so if it gave us a certain feeling, then we would go with that, because ultimately what's sitting behind that, or what led to that formation, is smaller or a lot intelligent beings, smaller beings that we would look like, that have basically given birth to that certain
sorry to interrupt, Rahul, but
sorry, you have to wait. Yeah. So we were sensitive to that, because what it is, when you're looking at even older life forms, intelligent bacteria, intelligent germ life, which has led to the configuration of that, we would recognize that it's a bringing together, you understand, of that life plan. So it's not just a case of, yes, it was optimum, but we're also reading the message of that location, which is being conveyed to us, you understand, from life forms even beyond our own life form. Yeah, so in I think it's a book referred to as Actual Facts number 6, Wu-Sabat. Yeah, what sometimes appears magical, or we would describe, or human beings would describe it as magical, is that the Masters explain that there's energies that have existed for millions, if not trillions of years. You understand? And the combination of their works or interactions can make certain things appear or manifest on this side of the physical, and we would refer to it as magical or fantastical or miracle, etc. But in actuality, it's just interactions of energies and beings that have existed well before us. So we were adept as ancient Egyptians as looking at these signs and plans in nature and working with it. So it's a case of that, the correlation, as we said, that this Sirius A and B interaction looked like an egg, and the place that correlated to it on Earth was this place called Egg Island. And so it was today called Egg Island. So that was a sign to us that that was the right place to continue with the fertilization of this particular life form.
Sure. Power attack. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. And I got it for. Aaliyah, if you want to come back in now.
Rahul, but I don't actually have a question. I was just saying I went away from my desk for a minute and I saw a notification on there saying to unmute. So I don't actually have a question.
Oh, your hand was raised. That's why we were.
Oh, okay, let me lower now. Let me lower. Okay.
Oh, no problem. Appreciate that. No problems. Thanks for the explanation. Okay. Any other questions?
There doesn't appear to be any other questions.
Okay. Yeah. So yes, it's a fair point. I think Patar asked a good question, and I suppose if you've ever travelled to ancient Egypt as it stands today, understood, then in some of the sites like the tomb of the pharaohs, for example, Yeah, and you look at the combination, or where it's positioned, or where it's located. Yeah, they chose that site because for example, in that location, there's a mountain that's in the back, and its shape and its natural shape looks like a pyramid. So we were sensitive to these types of observations that we see in nature, and even though we've been talking a lot about observers, etc., one of the things about understanding the environment in and around us, particularly when you read books like Sacred Wisdom of Tahuti, written by Tahuti's understanding of how we've reached this really detailed knowledge of Pa'ut, all existence, is through observation, do you understand? Is through being in touch with one's inner being, do you understand? And the messages that we're receiving from, not only natural nature, but life forms, or maybe more agreeable life forms that want to guide or help to guide the direction and pathway of growth of us as human beings, and being in tune with that. Because Wu-Sabat is remember, being broadcast at a frequency within the universe that we tap into. I think the issue is that we tend to be in sync with the broadcast and then drop off, in sync with the broadcast and drop off. And the key is obviously to stay in sync and maintain it. And clearly, in order to do that well, one is not only just obviously the reading, our spiritual practices, the type of food that we eat, so on and so forth. But as you know, the key is going to be the environment we're in. And the environment is not conducive to keep us in alignment with Wu-Sabat. If anything, it causes us to, one, have a lot of white noise between what we should be receiving, or we get an interference in that signal. And so one of the reasons why they wanted to separate or keep that master teacher or our master teacher away from us is for that reason, so that we would be weak, obviously spiritually, and not be in sync or in tune, or it would take longer for us to receive these various messages for the who, what, where, why, and how that certain things are taking place. Now, there is a bit more to the Sirius situation from what we've described, but as I said, we'll probably cover that in a later class, do you understand? Because this particular star constellation, as we've expressed, which is key because it links us to the 19th galaxy, or the original origin of our ancestors. You understand? It touches onto two questions that have been asked, because Leah asked a question earlier in relation to the finding, understood, but it relates to why we were relocated to Earth in the first place. It wasn't our original. We are the originals here, but it wasn't our original planet. Do you understand? We were located here because a certain incident took place which destroyed the solar system where we were, and then Parnathara had to intervene and relocate us here. But that's something we'll go into in more detail to set out the basics in this series of classes. Any other questions? If there's no other, then we're going to close for there, because I say
there is another question.
There is another one. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, there is. The question asks from Adorna, how are we as a race connected with Israel?
To be honest, you could, on most parts of the planet, I think we were the original people there. The issue there is now is that none of the people that are fighting over that land were the original people that were there in the first place. But the religious as a race, I mean, it's just another part of the land. There's no particular special significance in that relation to it, to us directly, in the sand, because the movement as a result of the 2012 situation, where the axis of the planet starts to point towards the center of the galaxy every 12 to 13,000 years, Well, that energy source, which emanates basically from the central sun, 600 miles in diameter, and you get this sort of pulsing back and forth between the sun in the center and the surface of the planet. So the sun being referred to as Natat or Nut, and the surface of the planet being referred to as Geb or Sabab. You understand? And so there's a back and forth that takes place every 12 to 13,000 years. This event triggers, and the planet basically effectively has an orgasm. You understand? And this is why everybody's getting so spiritual all of a sudden. Now, that energy point or source of where the pulsing is taking back and forth shifts, do you understand, every at this particular time period, understood? And it moved from Arabia to Africa. So that's and so those closest to it will feel this kind of change or awakening or awareness close to that source. So that is more pertinent than any location in Israel. What it is for them is that they in the monotheistic religions, both the Jews believe that Moses is returning back to that location, and the Palestinians, obviously, who are Muslims, believe that Jesus is returning back to that location. Do you understand? So both are thinking that where they perceive as their Messiah is returning back to that location, which is why they are fighting over the particular area, because they both perceive it as holy in that regard. You understand? So obviously we know that those in Israel currently are Jews, not Judahites. Understood? And we're seeking really to rebuild Solomon's temple, as they classify it as, in that location. And they know they're not the original Jews, is why they brought in the Falashas, understood, into Israel to help them with the, I suppose, spiritual connection in relation to that location. Now, a being did return, who is their Messiah, to that location, referred to as Nana in the Sumerian doctrine, whose name, Nan means master, and Nar means fire, understood, who is the Jesus of their Bible, but also the Lucifer of their Bible. So in Isaiah 14, chapter 14, verse 12, and in Revelations chapter 22, verse 16, Jesus and Lucifer are called the same name, in the bright morning star, which is this being of the Sumerian doctrine referred to as Nana, who did return back into that location. There's a video on YouTube which shows a light in that location, excuse me, which was observed by many in the world. Bright lights were descending down in that particular location. And so go on YouTube, you can find it. And this was symbolic of Nana, who had returned, leaving. Understand? So that is their Messiah, who's coming back for their 144,000 or the food. Well, obviously they don't believe in the 144,000. Those who are Mosesites, or who follow Moses, but they do believe in a Messiah or Moses returning back. And so that is the being that's being referenced in that regard. So they both believe in long and short. Muslims believe that Jesus is returning back there on a ladder in Damascus, and so that's why they're fighting for that area. And obviously the Jews believe that Moses are returning back there. But to us, it's not a place of significance that we would concern ourselves with. As I say, more time stay out of their way is the issue. Everywhere we are is where the place is considered to be holy or sacred. Do you understand? But obviously on the planet there are concentrated areas of energy which is more conducive for our lifestyle, which is why returning back to Africa at a certain point is what the key is, because there's certain places obviously that will be so hot as this sun cycle and the change in the planet starts to emerge, that certain groups of people who lack melanin will not be able to survive there. Understood? And so keeping us in and around the Mukasu is one of the keys for them, because we act as a form of protection for them. Because if we were not in and around them, a certain gene configuration within the Mukasu race that they're looking to take out, i.e. the RH negative strain or strand, they would basically, as we're going to be teaching about later on in this series of classes, there are, 10-ton stone balls, buried in Mexico and various places in South America, which extraterrestrials will simply take out of the ground, heat up, you understand, or draw them out of the ground into space, and then fire them into certain continents to take out this strand. But because we're sitting there as the children of the Netharu, they like to keep us there as a form of protection for them. This is why they always went and attacked teachers who, talked about go back to Africa, like Marcus Garvey, for example, and in modern times, in the case Dr. Malachi KZ York. Those who talk about staying in America, they tend to leave them alone. You understand? In terms of the Farrakhan has been controversial, let's say, they would consider him to be a controversial, powerful figure, but they haven't attacked the organization because he doesn't talk about go back to Africa. You understand? Whereas those who talk about going back to Africa and black people leaving the West and moving away from Caucasians in that regard, as a matter of course, yes, that's who they attack, because they know that it would make it easier then for them to be taken out by groups of extraterrestrials who want to remove that strain or strand that's been causing so much trouble on the planet in the last 6,000 or so years. Any other questions?
Yes, there's a follow-up question from Adorna. So wherever we are, it is holy. Yeah,
if we're acting in the right mind and in the right place, we've been in many places on the planet. Yeah, that we are those people, isn't it? We in-house the connection to the mental. We in-house the connection to our ancestors, and they say that the body is a temple. We mentioned earlier that the true word for Pharaoh was Pa Para Raye Aha, which is a temple of the sun and moon. So we in-house the divine. So wherever we are, that should be, if we're living in the right image, after the likeness of our ancestors, living our culture, being true to who we are according to nature, then that environment should be holy. We should be cleaning up those areas. The whole planet should be considered to be sacred. But how it's used or how man has infested the environment means that not all places are such, and therefore the way it's been abused, not all places are fully conducive to how it should be. So it's the same like when we talk about Rizq as a planet, for example, but wherever the Rizqiyians are can also be classified as Rizq. So wherever we are, do you understand, could as Musbatu or Sabaeans or Nuwaupians could be considered Nuwapia, because that's where we are, understood? So, or that's where we're inhabited, because the planet Earth is what you stand on, isn't it? Understand? That's not really the name of the planet. Understand? So you can be in Earth in America, you can be in Earth in England. Earth is what you stand on. So they don't even know the real name of the planet. Yeah. So if we were here first and we inhabited it, then wherever we are, is considered that holy place. And we started off obviously in South Africa. But we have inhabited all parts of the continent. At one time, remember, the continent was one landmass. It wasn't separated as it is today. That's how the Greeks refer to as Pangaea. And so we occupied all parts of this planet long before all other races were there. And when we established that culture there, then that's what we consider to be sacred, where we are, as long as we were doing or living in the image and after the likeness of those ancestors who created us. Any other questions?
No further open questions.
Okay, so yeah, we'll touch into as we explained in previously. We'll walk through this extraterrestrial map in some detail, and then walk through the who's who, really, because I think it's important to know who the different so-called actors are on this map and what their places and what they're responsible for. So we can see here, as I say, various characters responsible for different groups of human being on the planet, made in the image and after their likeness of their own ancestors. They're all coming from the original, and why, as I say, we ended up in a situation where a war took place. Several wars took place as a result of, say, certain activity that was taking place on the planet, which the Nadjar-u wanted to intervene and stop, and it led to the coming together of some unlikely combinations of groups working together for, say, different maybe agendas, that came together on a common agenda to take out a particular group of extraterrestrials. And we'll go through that in some detail the next time this particular class is on. So we're back on in 2 weeks' time. I'm sure we continue with this class, or if somebody will be teaching something else. If not, then it'll be part 3 of this. So yeah, check out the previous parts on the YouTube channel, All Eyes Midlands and North. If you want more information about who we are, check out the global website, United Sabaeans Worldwide.com. Some search, get you to the right place there. But yeah, United Sabaeans Worldwide.com. Check out there if you want to find out where your local All Eyes in Egypt store is, or if you're interested in the books that we've been covering off today. So appreciate everybody's time. Forgive the late start with a few technicals today. But yes, we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Stay safe until then. Check out other classes if you got that Sabian itch. You can't wait for the next installment of Wu-Sabat. But we'll be on this one, so next time, or another subject. Yeah, to answer your questions that today have not been answered. Take care, all. We'll see you soon. Okay.
What do yourself?
What do?